this is going to be part 4. Kevin Schulteis here with CHP's platform, going through point by point a bunch of the different issues and their platform. Me as an individual CHP member just has access to this, and you can see stuff on their website. And we're going to go through point by point here. A lot of things I don't necessarily have an opinion on yet, or fleshed out one. Some things I have an opinion on, and others will come out as I know more. So here we are, national finances. So, hang on. Let me zoom in a bit more. National finances. Okay, general statements. We must practice sound fiscal management, not overspend except in times of emergencies, war. We must not contribute to inflation, engage in chronic deficit budgeting, or engage in unjust exploration or impairment of property rights. Okay, this is going to be a very interesting topic of mine. I do have some stronger opinions of mine, and I'm sure they'll develop over time. But I am all for just measurements and things. So some of my thoughts might differ on CHP. So as I go through some of these points, we will see where their platform lies. Ultimately, we want to have biblically sound platform, and where there can be differencing of opinion on that and how to accomplish that, but we will see. So we should not contribute. I love some of that. We should not overspend, maybe in exception emergencies, or we should not contribute to inflation. Inflation is not a good thing, people. Our current media and our current governments have always said to you, let's do inflation 3%. We must try to have it at 3 or 3.5 or 4%. Woohoo! Wrong. Wrong on a million different fronts. If you know about economies, that is just outright dumb and stupid. But anyways, or engage in chronic deficit budgeting. I have thoughts on that, meaning if your government goes into deficit spending, if by January 1st you do not submit a balanced budget within 30 days, your government is now up for re-election. So that is my thought. So we will see what happens and go from there. National currency, weights and measurements. We should do things legally and honest. We should not be doing things behind the scenes and creating money out of thin air. We should get rid of the national we should get rid of the fractional reserve banking. We should get rid of the fractional reserve banking. Making money up out of thin air is just dumb. I'm not sure if we'll go into it, but we should go back to the gold standard. We need to be very hesitant on a variety of other things. But we need to go back to real money, not fiat money. We need to make sure things are worth something. National banking. In order to facilitate growth, a member-owned banking institutes, we favor the application of government-backed deposit insurance only to institutes that provide owner membership and fair voting. Okay, interesting. Confidentiality should not be abridged property rights by exercising unauthorized examination or seizures of individually acquired savings on deposits. So government can't just take your money. We should be careful about that. Financial institutes, federally incorporated by federal bank, should be supervised and regulated. And blah blah. Okay, bunch of other weird words. National budget. The cycle of deficit spending can be broken over a reasonably short amount of time, and we should strive to operate within a balanced budget. Like I said, my policy, my platform is if you go over budget, you are up for re-election immediately within 30 days. So people are going to get sick and tired of you overspending, and if you do not balance the budget, you should be fired. And yeah, if you can't figure it out, you should not run the government. So let somebody else run the government. National debt, a specific period to which national debt should be made and set aside to retire the national debt over a specific period. Pay down our debt. And then spend out of our abundance. Since a nation cannot borrow itself out of debt, government should not spend without imposing taxes. Government should not place future generations in bondage by deficit spending or public outlays to provide temporary or short-term benefits based on the current population. The CHP supports a constitutional amendment to require a balanced federal budget with provision for an appropriate escape clause to allow for deficits in the event of a national emergency such as war. And that's fair. We will get into taxation here momentarily, and I'll have some thoughts on that. National revenue, lotteries. Should not conduct, promote, or maintain lotteries. All winnings from any form of gambling should be treated as taxable income. Okay. So governments should get out of that if we are in that. Taxation. Government has the mandate to collect taxes in support of its legitimate programs in public interest. In turn, the government has a duty before God to conduct its economic affairs with honesty, impartiality, integrity, and a view to steward good with the taxes that it was entrusted to. The federal government is responsible to collect taxes in a way that respects the citizens' right to private ownership and enjoyment of that property, that it's fair and treats all taxpayers equally. This is hugely debatable, and as soon as you do one thing to one tax group and not to another tax group, then it is unequal. And this is actually going to go even against some of CHP's policies, because what they're saying here is treating all taxpayers equally. That they have to be very careful about, because, and or other governments, because it's easy to do tax cuts and benefits and credits for one group of people, but then another group of people doesn't get those benefits. And therefore you're taxing everybody, but then you're giving back some of that money to another group. That is now unequal. So be very careful about that. So I am holding the CHP liable to all taxpayers equally. The federal government should not collect taxes in a way that acts as disincentive to savings and investing, and that discourages productivity or adversely affects the economic output. Therefore, CHP advocates a taxation system where the federal government collects taxes by means of a national sales tax. Okay. National spending. Okay, let me go back to the taxes. I don't think it goes into it, but I'm of the opinion that, first of all, taxes should be collected by, say, the provinces, and not so much the federal. Number two, taxes should be paid yearly by check or deposit by the individual. It should not be coming off of our paychecks, and I'll get into the reasons why. And it should also be a lot lower. And as a good example, total taxes collected can be 10% across the board, something like 3% going to federal, 4% provincial, 3% municipal. And in times of war, then like provincial and municipal can allocate an extra percentage back to federal or something like that in times of war. And then worst case scenario, we have to borrow money from future taxes, but that is it in times of war. Number two is having our taxes actually not come off our paycheck and not be taken from the federal government. We actually have to pay the federal government. Allows us to see how much money is actually being taken out, and it actually creates a friction point where people are pissed off all the time. And that's actually a good thing, because now they're constantly watching ways that they can reduce their taxes, and they're going to be constantly questioning where their tax money is being spent. versus the current system where the government just takes everything and then they give you back some of it. People are less engaged in that method, and it is very wasteful and very dangerous system. And you've actually removed some checks and balances and friction points for a central government when it can take money at whatever rate it wants and it gets to take it immediately. You now have eliminated some checks and balances in how powerful that government can get in terms of spending money. So you need to put some checks and balances in there, and we can use the provincial system to do that. So anyways, those are some thoughts there. Let's see here. Okay, national spending. Okay, this is an important part. Order of responsibility. We affirm the needs of the community are better served when responsibility is placed where it is rightfully belongs, close to the grassroots of the society rather than the level, than each higher level than the state, right? So if you have problems you always want to solve the problem as close to the issue as possible. When you start getting to state and federal levels, you are very far removed from the problem. So therefore, your solutions blanket everybody and are not efficient, and they're not very efficient at spending and things like that. I've been even privy back in the day of I remember being on the farm, and one of the farmers on a local cow farm would give all the animals antibiotics even though only a few of them were sick, just because it was easier and it was more efficient. And he says it was more efficient, but it in other ways very costly, and it also has other side effects as well. But when you are able to treat individual people close to their issues, then it's more efficient. Government should be obliged to review all their efficiency levels and minimize wasteful expenditures, personal perks. Travel, unnecessary expenses should also be conducted. Public accountability. Auditor General should be free of any political influence and have access to all relevant data, right? And be able to look at everything. Zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting should be implemented in the government departments on a periodic rotating basis. Value for money, making sure that MPs make it clear decisions on projects, value for money, effectiveness and stuff. Okay, sunset system. Government programs should lapse after specific periods, and responsible ministers and public servants should be required to present Parliament with evidence to justify spending. So there's that saying that nothing is more permanent as a temporary government program, meaning something comes in short term, but then it's not short term, it stays around forever. And that's not a good thing. Special interest groups. No public funds should be given to special interest groups except by way of payment for specific services on behalf of the government. They should fund themselves or seek voluntary donations. Duplication of studies. The value of cost of government studies should be carefully weighed before being initiated, and try to avoid duplication. Canadian pension plan. Government should strive toward a pension plan which is self-funded. Now that's maybe easier said than done. Okay, so that is that, and I will go into some of the more details after.